They said the mirrors here were just for therapy, to help us face ourselves. But on the second night I heard it, my voice whispering from the glass. It said my name like it knew something I didn't. They told me it was just the medication, but tell me, when the reflection moves after you stop, what else can it be? This is what happened in room 9. And if you hear it too, don't answer the mirror.
Chapter 1. Ravensbrook came into view just after dusk, a sliver of gray stone rising from a sea of fog. The road that led there had long since stopped pretending to be a road. It was more of a suggestion. 2 narrow tracks veering through the pines until they ended at iron gates marked only by a single word rusted into the arch above. Elena Vasquez sat in the back of the cab, her hands clutching her bag like it contained her heartbeat. The driver said nothing as they approached the gates. He didn't have to. The silence that lived in this place already spoke enough. When the gates groaned open, she caught her first glimpse of the main building, an immense slate-roofed asylum crouched beneath the hillside. Its windows were tall, narrow, and unlit, except for one faint glow in the upper east wing. The air smelled of moss, damp stone, and the cold tang of iron. A woman stood at the top of the steps waiting for her. Tall, pale, dressed in gray. Her expression was neutral, almost kind, though her eyes had the stillness of something that didn't blink often. "Ms. Vasquez," she said, voice smooth and rehearsed, "welcome to Ravensbrook Mental Retreat. We specialize in restorative silence here." Elena nodded. She had come for silence, or so she told herself. The noise inside her head, the voices of guilt and grief, had grown unbearable since her mother's passing. Her doctor had said a stay here might help. Isolation, he called it. Detox for the mind. Inside, the halls of Ravensbrook stretched long and sterile, painted a shade of white that felt closer to bone. There were no mirrors on the walls, not even in the entrance. Instead, blank spaces hung where they should have been. As the attendant led her upstairs, they passed a covered shape leaning against the corridor wall, a mirror tall and shrouded in a white sheet that fluttered slightly in the draft. Elena paused. "Why is it covered?" The attendant didn't turn. "We don't uncover the mirrors at night." Her tone was calm, final, the kind of answer that ended questions rather than invited them. Her room was small but clean, a single bed, a writing desk, and one high window overlooking the courtyard. The air carried a faint chemical sweetness, disinfectant maybe, or something older. In the corner stood a full-length mirror draped in another white sheet. Elena frowned. "Another one?" "Yes," she said. "Part of the program. You'll have your sessions with Dr. Kern tomorrow morning. Until then, please, try to rest." When the door closed, the silence pressed in. No hum of machinery, not voices, not even the wind. Only the soft ticking of a wall clock that seemed too loud for the size of the room. Elena set her bag down, touched the sheet's hand, and hesitated. The fabric was rough, heavy, almost damp to the touch. She thought she heard something beneath it, a faint, hollow sound, like breathing against glass. She let go. "Just the pipes," she whispered, but her voice sounded strange in the stillness. Hours passed, though outside the night stayed the same. When she finally lay down, she kept her eyes on the covered mirror. Its silhouette in the moonlight looked too human, tall, narrow shoulders, a bowed head. She closed her eyes, but sleep didn't come. It began with a sound, a soft dragging, like fingertips along fabric. Then a whisper. Not clear enough to understand, but enough to feel. Her eyes snapped open. The sheet was moving, ever so slightly, as though something beneath it had exhaled. She sat up, pulse pounding. The voice came again, lower now, the way someone might murmur through water. "Who's there?" The room didn't answer. The sheet went still. After a long moment, she forced herself out of bed and crossed the floor. Her hand trembled as she reached for the edge of the cover. She told herself it was nothing. The air, her imagination, the exhaustion. Her fingers brushed the cloth, and the whisper stopped. The air thickened. She could hear her heartbeat in her ears. Then a sudden knock at the door shattered the moment. Elena yelped, dropping the fabric. "Ms. Vasquez?" It was the attendant again, her voice muffled but calm. "Lights out is at 10. Please don't disturb the mirrors at dark." Elena stared at the door. "I wasn't," but the footsteps were already fading down the hall. "Don't uncover them at night." The phrase lingered in her mind as she turned off the lamp and crawled back into bed. The mirror stood silent, faceless. But even as her eyes drifted shut, she thought she saw something pale beneath the cloth, a faint shimmer like light moving behind a curtain. That night, Elena dreamed of reflections that moved on their own, of faces pressed against glass from the inside, whispering her name in the dark.
Chapter 2.
Chapter 2. The Glass Doesn't Forget. Morning came reluctantly to Ravensbrook. The fog hadn't lifted. It had only changed color, from black to gray, wrapping the asylum in a damp, breathless haze. The courtyard below Elena's window looked the same as the night before, still, empty, almost preserved in frost. She hadn't slept much. The whisper from the mirror, if that's what it was, still lingered somewhere behind her thoughts, just out of reach. Every time she closed her eyes, she thought she saw that pale shimmer under the cloth again. When the breakfast bell rang, it sounded more like a funeral chime than a welcome. The dining hall smelled faintly of disinfectant and boiled oats. Patients sat in rows, each facing the same direction, as if rehearsing a quiet ritual. Their movements were slow, synchronized, spoons scraping in unison, no one speaking above a murmur. Across the room, Elena noticed a young woman with sunken eyes staring into a silver tray. She wasn't eating, just gazing into the reflection, whispering to herself. A nurse passed by, gently turning the tray face down. "No mirrors at the table, Miss Clare." The woman didn't respond, but when her lips moved again, Elena could swear she mouthed the same phrase she'd heard last night. "We don't uncover them at night." After breakfast, she was led to the therapy wing, a long, arched corridor lined with patient rooms. The air was cooler there, sharp, with the scent of alcohol and something faintly metallic. The nurse guiding her, an older woman named Marin, walked without looking back. "Your session is in room 12, she said. Elena hesitated at the doorway. The light inside flickered, not broken, but hesitant, as if something unseen moved between her and the bulb. Room 12 was nearly empty. A desk, a chair, and on the far wall, a mirror. But unlike the others, this one was uncovered. It was cracked across the center, splitting the reflection into two uneven halves. A faint pulse of light shimmered along the crack, not from the bulb, but from inside the glass. Elena took a step closer. Her reflection blinked, a heartbeat too late. She froze. The mirror's surface rippled, just once, as though a breath had fogged it from within. Behind her reflection, faint and blurred, stood another shape, a shadow leaning too near, its head tilted, its mouth almost open. When she turned around, the room was empty. She stepped back toward the door, her fingers trembling as they touched the handle. The door creaked, but didn't open. The lights dimmed for just a second, enough to make her reflection fade. When they flickered back to life, the mirror looked ordinary again. No shadow, no shimmer. Just her face, pale and shaken. Then from behind her, a voice. "You shouldn't stare too long." Elena turned sharply. It was Nurse Marin, standing in the doorway now, holding a tray of folded linens. Her eyes didn't meet hers. "It's dangerous to look at that one," Marin continued softly. "The glass, it remembers." Elena frowned. "Remembers?" Marin nodded once, then stepped closer, lowering her voice. "That mirror came from the old therapy ward. Years ago, before this place was called a retreat, they used to use it for what they called reintegrative sessions. Patients swore they saw the people they lost, standing right behind them." "Hallucinations," Elena murmured. "That's what the doctors said, but they sealed that ward for a reason." The nurse's gaze flicked to the mirror. "The glass sees more than your face. Don't forget that." Marin left without another word, her footsteps fading down the corridor. Elena turned back to the mirror. The crack down the middle caught the light, glowing faintly like a wound that refused to heal. She reached out a hand. Her fingertips hovered just above the surface, close enough to feel the cool breath of the glass. She jerked her hand back. The sound came from nowhere and everywhere at once. A sigh inside her head, her name dragged across invisible wires. She forced a laugh that sounded wrong in the stillness. "You're losing it," she whispered to herself, "just like before." But the mirror seemed to shimmer again, slower this time, like a heartbeat struggling to keep time with hers. She noticed something strange. The crack had changed direction. It now cut across her reflection's throat. The breath left her lungs. Suddenly, the door behind her opened with a jolt. Dr. Kieran entered, his expression polite but unreadable. "Ah, Miss Vasquez, you've met our oldest resident." He gestured to the mirror with a faint smile. "We call it the mirror that remembers." Rather poetic, don't you think? Elena forced herself to nod. "It's unsettling." "That's the point," he replied calmly, arranging papers on his desk. "Every scar, every guilt, every echo we deny." He looked at her reflection instead of her face. "What do you see, Ms. Vasquez?" She opened her mouth to answer, but in the reflection, her lips didn't move. Dr. Kieran didn't notice. "You'll get used to it," he said, making a note on his clipboard. "The mirror only remembers what it's shown. Be careful what you reveal." "Be careful," repeated, fading into echo. When Elena finally left the room, she didn't look back. But as the door closed, she caught a glimpse of her reflection still standing there, perfectly still, perfectly alive. And then it smiled.
Chapter 3.
Chapter 3: The First Voice. Morning at Ravensbrook always began the same way, slow, deliberate, like the world outside the asylum had forgotten how to move. The fog still pressed against the windows, thick and gray, turning the light to milk. Elena woke with the uneasy certainty that she hadn't been alone during the night. The sheet over the mirror hadn't moved, but she could feel its presence watching through the fabric. Her hand trembled as she brushed her hair aside, eyes locked on the draped shape in the corner. "It's just glass," she whispered, the words barely reaching her own ears. Just glass and light. But the silence that followed didn't agree. After breakfast, Nurse Marin guided her back to room 12, the therapy room with the cracked mirror. The hallways were quiet, except for the rhythmic sound of their footsteps and the faint echo of whispers behind closed doors. Each whisper had the same rhythm, the same soft cadence, as though the whole building shared a single, unseen voice speaking through the walls. When they reached the room, Dr. Kern was already waiting. He greeted Elena with the same mechanical warmth he used on everyone. "Good morning, Miss Vasquez. How did you sleep?" Elena's smile faltered. "I didn't." He adjusted his glasses and nodded, as though insomnia were expected, even encouraged. That's quite normal at first. Silence tends to make the mind speak louder. He motioned toward the chair across from the mirror. "Please, have a seat." Elena hesitated. The mirror had changed again. The crack seemed deeper now, its jagged edges branching like veins. The light above them flickered, briefly illuminating what looked like faint fingerprints on the glass. She sat down, careful to keep her eyes low. Dr. Kern began in his slow, measured voice. "I want you to describe what you see in the reflection. Don't think, just speak." Elena lifted her gaze. Her reflection looked pale, sleepless, but familiar. "I see myself," she said quietly. "And how does that make you feel?" "Uneasy." "Why?" "Because..." She stopped. The reflection's mouth was still moving, even after hers had gone still. She blinked, convinced it was a trick of the light, but then, Elena. The whisper came through the glass, so soft it could have been breath fogging the surface. Her body cold. The voice wasn't random. It was intimate, precise, familiar. Her mother's voice. Her throat tightened. "Did you hear that?" she whispered. Dr. Kern didn't look up. Hear what? The voice from the mirror. He scribbled something on his pad. Auditory recall, a common response to stress therapy. No, that's not... She stopped again. The reflection's lips moved once more, this time forming a smile that didn't belong to hers. It was soft, knowing, the way her mother used to smile when she was about to scold her gently. "Elena," it whispered again, exactly how her mother used to, that same low tone, the same emphasis, the same heartbreak in the syllables. She stumbled back, knocking the chair over. Dr. Kern's voice stayed steady. "Miss Vasquez, please, sit down. You're having a stress reaction." That was her voice. He sighed, finally meeting her eyes, calm, clinical, empty. "You've been off your medication for several days now. Auditory hallucinations are common during adjustment. This is precisely why you're here." But Elena wasn't listening anymore. Her gaze was locked on the mirror. The reflection stood perfectly still, but behind it, another shape had appeared. A silhouette of a woman, blurred and colorless, hair falling over one shoulder, standing directly behind the reflection, her head tilted in the same familiar way her mother's always had. "You shouldn't have left me." Her heart hammered in her ears. "Doctor, there's someone..." When she turned, the space behind her was empty. When she faced the mirror again, the silhouette was gone. She stood motionless for a long moment. Dr. Kern's voice broke through the stillness. "You're projecting unresolved grief, Miss Vasquez. The mind has extraordinary power to resurrect what it refuses to let go." He smiled faintly, then added, "In time, the reflection will stop talking back." Elena's jaw clenched. "And if it doesn't?" He didn't answer. He just wrote something on his clipboard and said, "We'll increase the dosage." He left her alone to adjust. The mirror stood there, waiting. Minutes crawled by. The silence thickened, pulsing like a heartbeat. Elena couldn't resist. She turned back toward the mirror once more. Her reflection smiled again, but this time it spoke first. "You left me alone, Elena. You promised you'd stay." Her breath caught. "Mom?" The reflection tilted its head. Her own voice came back, hollow, echoing. "You let me die." She backed away until her shoulders hit the wall. No, that's not..." "Look at me." The words were a command. The reflection's eyes darkened, glass rippling like water around them. And for one horrifying second, the face in the mirror was not hers at all. It was her mother's, pale and dripping, eyes wide with accusation. She screamed. The light above shattered, plunging the room into darkness. Only the mirror remained visible, glowing faintly with its own light, pulsing, alive. "We see you. We remember." When the lights flickered back on, the mirror was whole again. No crack, no shimmer. Her reflection was normal. Only her voice trembled when she whispered, "The glass doesn't forget."
Chapter 4.
Chapter 4. The Patient Who Answered Back. The morning after the mirror spoke, Ravensbrook felt different, colder, quieter, as if the entire building had inhaled and never exhaled again. Elena sat on the edge of her bed, her hands trembling against her knees. The bruises from the shattered bulb still peppered her arms, faint reminders that the previous night hadn't been a dream. The mirror in her room was gone now, removed by order of Dr. Kern, or so the nurse claimed, but the empty space it left on the wall seemed almost louder than the mirror itself. Still, she felt it watching. After breakfast, the hall stretched endlessly. Nurses moved in patterns that didn't make sense, pausing mid-step, staring at nothing, lips murmuring things no one else could hear. Elena kept her head down. Every flickering light made her flinch. Every whisper made her remember her mother's voice saying her name. At the end of the corridor, an old maintenance grate caught her eye. The vent cover was slightly loose, the screws uneven, as if someone had pried it open before. She shouldn't have stopped, but curiosity, the most dangerous kind, pulled her closer. She crouched, fingers brushing cold steel. Something thin was wedged inside the vent, a small leather-bound notebook wrapped in dust. The name scratched faintly on the inside cover read Mara L. The ink had bled from years of damp air, but the first page was still legible. March 14th. Dr. Kern says I'm making progress. He doesn't see the way the mirror moves when he turns away. I think it likes me. Elena frowned. The handwriting was tight, deliberate, letters pressed deep into the paper as though the writer had been shaking. She turned another page. March 17th. It doesn't copy anymore. When I smile, it waits. When I speak, it listens. I asked it what it wanted today, and it answered. The next entry was shorter, just one trembling line. March 19th. The glass knows my name. Elena swallowed hard. She read further, each page heavier than the last. Mara wrote of therapy sessions identical to her own, the same cracked mirror, the same whisper, the same doctor who called it hallucination. Only Mara hadn't stopped listening. The diary detailed how the reflection began teaching her, how it showed her memories that weren't hers, faces she didn't know. It promised her peace, if only she would answer back. Elena felt the air in her lungs turn sharp. She turned another page. March 22nd. I spoke to it tonight, said its name out loud. The light flickered 3 times. The reflection smiled, but I wasn't smiling anymore. It said, "Now we can trade." March 24th. The nurses stopped looking me in the eyes. I think they can tell I'm not the same. The handwriting changed after that. It became jagged, slanted, each letter rushed and uneven. Then the final entry. March 26th. It's not a reflection. It's an invitation. The rest of the page was torn out. Elena's breath hitched. The air around her felt wrong, too still, as if even the building was listening. A faint sound echoed from the vent, a whisper. At first, she thought it was the wind. Then she heard it again. Whisper, barely audible. Mara. Her stomach turned to ice. "Who's there?" she whispered back, instantly regretting it. Silence, then a faint chuckle, dry,
breathless from within the vent. She stumbled backward, clutching the diary to her chest. The laughter stopped, replaced by the sound of breathing, shallow, ragged, as if someone were pressed against the other side of the wall. Elena. That voice again, but it wasn't her mother this time. It was younger, female, fragile. Mara? You found it. Elena's knees nearly gave out. What do you mean? Whisper, slow. You read my words. Now it knows your name. A sudden gust of cold air blasted from the vent, carrying the smell of rust and something sweet like rotting flowers. The diary slipped from her hands, pages scattering across the floor like dead leaves. She ran to the door, pounding on it. Nurse, someone's in the wall. No answer, only the hum of the lights and the whisper of air moving through unseen ducts. When she turned back, one of the diary pages had landed face up at her feet. It wasn't the same handwriting anymore. New ink bled across the paper, fresh, still wet, forming words that hadn't been there before. You heard me. You answered. Elena backed away slowly, eyes fixed on the vent. No, I didn't. Whisper, you did. The vent cover rattled violently, then stopped. Nothing moved. She knelt down, trembling, and picked up the diary again. The final line, the one that had ended with, "It's an invitation," now continued in fresh ink. And once you speak, it comes through. Elena stared at the vent. The bolts began to turn, slowly, deliberately, unscrewing themselves one by one. She stumbled backward, breath caught in her throat. A hand pressed against the grate from the inside, pale, dripping, fingers too long, bending wrong. Then another. The metal bowed outward with a soft, ringing ping. Whisper close to ear. Thank you for answering, Elena. She screamed, throwing the diary into the vent as the grate burst open. And then, silence. When the nurses found her minutes later, the vent was empty. The diary was gone. Only a single page remained beside her bed. In Elena's own handwriting, it read, "The mirror is open."
Chapter 5.
Chapter 5. This isn't therapy, it's a summoning. Days passed, or maybe nights. Time at Ravensbrook had started to blur. The lights dimmed and brightened with no rhythm, and the clocks in the halls were always wrong, each one showing a different hour, none of them moving. Elena barely slept. The moment she closed her eyes, she heard it again, a faint voice behind her eyelids. Elena, listen. She kept telling herself she imagined it, that the vent, the diary, and the whisper were all fragments of her breaking mind. But every time she tried to believe that, the world around her shifted slightly, like glass warping under heat. The nurses avoided her now. They spoke softly when she entered the room, exchanging glances that ended too quickly. She wasn't supposed to notice the patterns, but she did. Each night, the lights across the east wing flickered off just for a moment, around 3 in the morning. Then came the hum of the backup generators, a long, low vibration that made the mirrors tremble in their frames. And each time that happened, someone went missing. Elena noticed first with the man across the hall, Mr. Darren, who spent his days staring at the ceiling and mumbling about reflections that breathed. One morning, his bed was empty. Sheets smooth, room silent. The staff said he'd been transferred. 2 nights later, a young woman named Fiona disappeared. She'd screamed in the middle of the night, long enough for half the ward to wake up, then fell silent mid-sentence as if someone had pressed mute on her voice. The next morning, her door was locked from the inside. And now, Elena noticed something else. Each name was crossed out from the patient log at 3:03 a.m. She spent her days in the common room pretending to read, but her eyes were fixed on the mirrored clock above the fireplace. The reflection was always wrong, lagging by a few seconds as though time itself hesitated before following. That lag made her stomach twist. 3:03, 3:03. The voice wasn't coming from inside her head anymore. It was in the building. Sometimes she swore the walls were breathing. That evening, she confronted Nurse Cleary, the only staff member who still looked her in the eyes. "Nurse, how many patients have gone missing this month?" Cleary froze, her expression blank. "Patients don't go missing, dear. They recover, they leave." "Then why does the glass in my room keep fogging from the inside?" Cleary's eyes flickered with something like fear. She leaned closer, whispering, They're calling from the glass." Then she turned and walked away, leaving Elena staring after her, heart pounding. The phrase repeated in her head, "They're calling from the glass." Later that night, Elena snuck into the therapy records room. The door creaked, echoing down the hall like a warning. Inside, shelves of dusty folders leaned in crooked lines. A faint smell of mildew and disinfectant clung to the air. She pulled out one file, then another. Names she recognized: Darren, Fiona, Mara. Each one had identical therapy schedules. Mirror exposure, 2:30 a.m. to 3 a.m. And then, nothing. No discharge date, no medical notes, just an empty page. She turned. The reflection in the glass door across the room didn't move with her. It stood perfectly still, tilting its head ever so slightly as though curious. Elena froze. Her pulse thundered in her ears. Then the reflection smiled. "We see you." A door's surface rippled, faintly first, then more violently, like water disturbed by an unseen hand. She stumbled back, knocking over a metal cart. The noise shattered the silence, and instantly, the ripples stopped. The reflection returned to normal. But now, across every folder she had opened, new ink bled through the paper. 3:03, 3:03, 3:03. Every page, every name, the same phrase. Her breath came in short, sharp bursts. She gathered the files and ran. Back in her room, she spread them across the floor. The pattern was clear now. Each disappearance occurred at precisely 3:03 a.m., the same moment the building's lights dimmed. When the lights reset, the mirrors shimmered. When the mirrors shimmered, the voices called. And when the voices called, someone answered. This wasn't therapy. It was a summoning. Hours passed. The night stayed the same. Elena sat on the floor, eyes locked on the covered mirror across her room. The thin, white sheet over it moved slightly with every draft, like breath beneath fabric. She told herself not to look. Not again. But her curiosity was stronger than her fear. With shaking fingers, she reached out and peeled the sheet down, slowly, inch by inch. The glass beneath pulsed faintly with dim light, as though it had veins beneath its surface. Her own reflection stared back, wide-eyed and terrified. Then the reflection blinked, but she hadn't. "Stop," she whispered. The reflection smiled. 3:03. The clock on her nightstand flickered. 2:59. 3 minutes. The reflection whispered again. 3 minutes until the door opens. Elena stumbled backward, tripping over the scattered files. "What door?" she breathed. The mirror darkened, the reflection fading into shadow. "You'll see." A low, resonant hum builds to near silence. Only the ticking clock remains. 2:59. 300. 3:01. 3:02. Then 3:03. The bulbs overhead burst in unison, plunging the ward into darkness. And from every mirror in Ravensbrook, a sound began to rise, low first, like a whispering crowd, then louder, growing, calling, "Elena!"
Chapter 6.
Chapter 6. The Hallway of Reflections. The East Wing wasn't supposed to exist. According to the maps on the staff bulletin board, Ravensbrook ended at Ward D, a dead-end hallway of locked patient rooms and dusty fire exits. But that night, as the emergency lights flickered back to life after the 3:03 blackout, Elena saw a door she had never noticed before. A door without a handle. A door that hummed softly as if something behind it was breathing. Her pulse quickened. She shouldn't go closer, she knew that, but curiosity, that terrible pulling thing that had already led her into so many wrong rooms, whispered again. She touched the metal frame. It was warm. Then, quietly, the door clicked open on its own. Inside waited a corridor she hadn't seen in any of the facility's plans. Long, narrow, and suffocatingly still. The air smelled of old paper and ozone, with a faint sweetness underneath, like flowers left too long in water. The walls shimmered faintly, reflecting slivers of her movement, even though no mirrors were visible. Her shoes squeaked once against the floor, and the echo came back delayed, slower, heavier. She turned her head sharply. No one was there. The emergency lights buzzed overhead, weak and distant. Their pale glow ended halfway down the hall, swallowed by blackness. But what caught her attention wasn't the light, it was the fabric. Long shapes lined the walls, tall and rectangular, draped in black cloth, dozens of them, each one the height of a person. Mirrors. She stepped closer to the first. A small brass plate was nailed beneath the frame. The engraving read, "Fiona Hale," the woman who screamed. She swallowed. Her throat was dry. She moved to the next. Darren Cole. Then the next, Mara L. The same names from the therapy files. Each vanished patient, each mirror. They're calling from the glass. She froze. The whisper didn't come from inside her head. It came from beneath the nearest cloth, vibrating softly through the air. Her fingers trembled as she reached out. She shouldn't, but she couldn't stop herself. She lifted the edge of the cloth. The mirror beneath wasn't reflective. Not exactly. It pulsed with a dull silvery light as though it were a liquid, alive. And in its depths, faint shapes moved. Not her reflection, not shadows. People.
Dozens of faces pressing against the glass from the other side, distorted and silently, their mouths opened and closed soundlessly as if mouthing her name. She dropped the cloth and staggered back, heart hammering. The hallway seemed longer now, stretching endlessly in both directions. The air grew colder, the lights dimmer. A faint humming started, deep beneath the floor. Then, something new, a rhythmic creak, metal on metal, like doors unlocking. Elena backed away, eyes darting from one covered mirror to the next. They were moving. The cloths were trembling, rippling as though the glass beneath them was breathing faster, hungrier. 303. Her hand brushed another brass plate. The name stopped her cold. Elena Vasquez, pending. Her name, her own name. No, she whispered, shaking her head. No, that's not possible. The letters gleamed faintly under the flickering light, freshly engraved, edges sharp, the metal still warm. She backed up until her spine hit the opposite wall. Then, with a loud, low metal groan, one cloth slipped from its mirror and fell to the floor. The mirror revealed beneath was blank at first, then slowly her reflection appeared. But it wasn't moving like her. It stood still, staring, as her own body trembled and gasped. Then it smiled. "We told you not to look." Elena turned to run, but the hallway had changed. Where the door was, there was only another mirror, draped in black. She ran to it, yanking the cloth away, and found not herself, but the empty common room beyond, visible through the glass like a window. She could see it, the furniture, the dim lights, but it wasn't moving. Everything on the other side was frozen, colorless. She banged on the surface. "Help! Someone!" And then she saw her reflection behind her, smiling again. "You're already here." Her breath clouded the glass. But when she stepped back, the fog didn't fade. It stayed, pressed against the other side, from inside the mirror. Her double exhaled slowly, matching her movements a beat too late. The reflection's hand lifted, pressing against the glass from within. 5 long fingers, perfectly aligned with hers. Only the fingertips on the inside left streaks, dark streaks. Blood. Elena stumbled backward, tripping over the fallen cloth. She scrambled to her feet and ran, the air tightening around her as though the hallway itself was closing in. Every mirror she passed began to tremble. Every brass plate shone brighter. The whispers rose, overlapping, dozens of voices calling from within the glass. "Elena, stay, trade, it's waiting." She reached the end of the hall and found another door. This one was old wood, cracked, its hinges black with age. Carved into its center, barely visible under dust and time, were 3 words: "Do not reflect." The humming stopped. For the first time in what felt like hours, there was silence. Elena turned the handle. A faint light leaped through the crack, cold and blue. She hesitated, hand trembling on the frame. "We're still waiting." Her reflection's voice behind her. She turned, and every cloth in the hallway fell at once. Every mirror now stood uncovered, and every reflection, hers, theirs, all of them, smiled in unison. The light from behind the open door spilled forward, reflecting infinitely down the corridor. It looked like the mirrors were breathing. Or maybe it was the other way around. Elena took one step toward the open door, and every reflection stepped closer too.
Chapter 7.
Chapter 7. When the Mirror Follows You. Elena hadn't slept since the hallway. She couldn't. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw them, the rows of mirrors, her own face multiplied into infinity, each reflection smiling when she couldn't. Now, back in her small office at Ravensbrook, the light buzzed in and out, flickering between moments like a bad memory. A cup of cold coffee sat on her desk, untouched. The taste of metal lingered in her mouth, though she hadn't taken a sip. The clock said 3:02 a.m. She stared at the second hand. It twitched forward once, then stopped. Her skin prickled. She turned toward the wall-mounted mirror above the sink, the same one she'd covered 2 nights ago. The sheet was gone. Her reflection looked back at her, tired, pale, wide-eyed. But it wasn't quite right. When she tilted her head, the reflection hesitated a beat too long before copying her. And when she blinked, it didn't. No. She stepped back, heart pounding. The light flickered again, and her reflection moved before she did this time, just slightly, almost imperceptibly. It raised its hand half a second too soon. Not following, leading. She stumbled out of her office, the hallway stretching before her in dim, uneven pools of light. The floor tiles shone faintly with wax, polished that afternoon by the janitor. She glanced down as she walked. Her reflection was in the tiles, distorted by the seams, but there. And when she slowed, it kept walking. She froze. The sound stopped too. The hallway felt too long now, too silent, the air thick with disinfectant and something sweet, the same sweet rot from the mirror corridor. She turned and hurried toward the elevator. The polished doors gleamed faintly, showing her distorted outline. Only one problem. The reflection inside wasn't moving. The doors slid open with a groan, revealing darkness inside. The lights were out. Elena took one hesitant step forward, then stopped. Something inside shifted, a faint shimmer in the steel walls, not light, but motion. Her reflection appeared again in the brushed metal, but there were 2 of her this time. One standing where she was, and one already inside the elevator. Come down, Elena. Her stomach dropped. She stumbled back, hitting the wall, knocking over a metal tray that clattered to the floor. For a moment, everything went still. Then she saw it. Her reflection in the dented tray. It wasn't looking at her face. It was looking over her shoulder. She spun. Nothing. Only the empty hallway. Only her own ragged breathing. The tray rocked once more before settling. And in that warped silver surface, her reflection smiled. By morning, Elena had barricaded her office window with cardboard and pushed the mirror face down onto the floor. The sunlight through the blinds felt wrong, too thin, too white. She sat at her desk, flipping through Mara's diary, the one she'd found behind the vent days ago. The last page still bore that half-faded line. It's not a reflection, it's an invitation. Elena traced the words with her fingertip. What are you inviting? What do you want? The air felt heavier when she said it, like the room was holding its breath. Her phone vibrated, an unknown number. She hesitated, then answered. Only silence. Then a faint sound, almost beneath hearing. Breathing, slow, measured. She held the phone away, hand trembling. On the dark screen, her reflection stared back, but her mouth wasn't moving. It's almost time. The call ended. Hours passed,
though outside the light stayed the same. Elena walked the halls in silence, clutching the diary like a talisman. She caught glimpses of herself everywhere now, the edge of a picture frame, the chrome handle of a gurney, even the curved surface of a stethoscope someone had dropped on the floor. Each one carried a flicker of motion that didn't belong to her. She began testing them, covering one surface, then another. It didn't matter. Her reflection moved between them. When she turned her head too quickly, she saw herself vanish from one surface and appear instantly in another, always facing her, always waiting. She whispered, "What do you want?" "To remember you." Later that night, she found herself standing before the staff bathroom mirror. She didn't remember walking there, didn't remember unlocking the door. The room smelled of bleach and faint perfume, someone's attempt to mask decay. She faced the mirror. The reflection stood perfectly still, the same expression, the same tired eyes. Then, without warning, the reflection lifted its hand and pressed it against the glass. Elena didn't move, but her reflection did, palm spreading wide until the glass groaned softly under pressure. Tiny cracks spidered outward, glimmering in the fluorescent light. Her reflection leaned closer, lips moving soundlessly, then speaking, faint and cold. "You're late." Elena stumbled backward, her breath quick and shallow. The cracks pulsed faintly, and behind them she saw movement, a faint shadow crawling underneath the mirror's surface, like something trapped behind ice. The reflection smiled wider now. Not her smile, something older. The shadow spread to fill the glass, and the fluorescent lights flickered once, twice. Then her reflection blinked, not at her, but before her. Once, twice, a signal. And Elena realized it wasn't reflecting her movements. It was recording them. Every twitch, every blink, every word. It was learning, waiting for you to stop. She ran, through the halls, through the silence, past walls that seemed to shimmer as she passed. Every polished surface held her face, dozens of them, all watching, all perfectly still. She covered her eyes. "You're not real." When she opened them again, all the lights in the facility had gone out. Only the reflective surfaces glowed faintly, each one pulsing like a heartbeat, the same rhythm echoing through her skull. And from every direction, her own voice whispered, "We're already here. We've been waiting. You shouldn't have looked." Elena pressed her back to the wall, staring at the nearest window. For a moment, she thought she saw only darkness beyond the glass. Then her reflection reached out from the inside. The crack spread slowly across the surface, a thin white line in the dark. And the voice came again, now right beside her ear. "When you sleep, I'll stand up."
Chapter 8.
Chapter 8. The Doctor Who Hid the Truth. The storm outside had quieted, but inside the asylum the air roared with whispers Elena could not place. Something in the walls hissed like 1,000 fingernails scraping from the other side. The lights flickered overhead, casting her shadow long across the tiled floor, elongated, trembling as though it feared what she was walking toward. Dr. Cairn's office waited at the end of the corridor. Her heartbeat felt too loud, like footsteps behind her. She pushed the door open. The room remained eerily tidy, too perfect for the chaos swallowing the rest of the asylum.
books aligned like soldiers, papers stacked without a crease. The mirrors, though, every size and shape, leaned against the walls, half covered by sheets, as if hiding bruises. Cairn stood with his back to her, gloved hands resting behind him. "I was hoping you'd make it here before it's too late," he said, voice smooth as polished glass. Elena didn't answer. She took a careful step inside. Her hairs on her arms rose, not from cold, but from the silence that swallowed her breath. She kept the flashlight steady, though her fingers felt slippery. "You knew this place was wrong," she said, "long before the patients disappeared, long before the screams started coming from the mirrors." Cairn laughed under his breath, a quiet, fractured sound. "Oh, Elena, it didn't start here. It never begins where you think." He turned slowly. His eyes were tired, pupils reflecting the room too sharply, too perfectly. He gestured to the covered mirrors. "This asylum wasn't built to heal the mind," he said. "It was built to harvest it." A chill crawled into her spine. "What are you talking about? What harvest?" Cairn stepped closer, lowering his voice as if mirrors could listen. "A man once lived on these grounds, a master craftsman of mirrors. But he wasn't merely shaping glass. He believed reflections were incomplete, that the surface trapped a shadow of who we are. He called it the unfinished soul." The lights buzzed overhead. "He was accused of ritual magic," Cairn continued. "Neighbors feared him. Objects moved in the night. Loved ones would look in the mirror and not look away." He paused, letting the weight of his next words settle like dust on a coffin. "When he died, a fire destroyed his home, or so they thought. Beneath the ashes remained his workshop, his tools, his rituals." Elena's pulse stung in her ears. This was more than folklore. She could feel it, thick as iron in the air. "So the asylum was built on top of that?" she asked. Cairn smiled. "Not accidental, I assure you." He walked to a massive mirror in the corner, taller than the doorframe, and peeled away the cloth. Elena's breath hitched. The surface was wrong. It rippled like dark water, distorting the reflection. Behind her own image, another face lingered, motionless, watching. "Mirror therapy," Cairn murmured. "Patients confronting their fear, reclaiming identity. But the truth," he leaned toward the glass, "the truth is that broken minds are easier to separate from their vessels." Elena took a step back, voice thin. You used them?" He didn't deny it. "Have you ever wondered, Elena, why you never see every patient leave? Because not every body leaves with a soul." A soft thump sounded behind her, like a hand pressing against the other side of the mirror. Cairn's tone deepened. "They are not my prisoners. They are my attempts. Restoration demands sacrifice. Do you remember? I told you I would fix what was broken in you. Elena froze. You lied to me. No, he whispered. You came here already fractured. Grief carved you open. Mirrors find cracks and widen them. Her flashlight beam struck her own reflection again, and her stomach dropped. Her reflection didn't move with her. It stared back with a wide, eager smile. Heart pounding, she stumbled backward. Kern took a step toward her, hands raised as if calming a wild animal. Do not run, he warned. If the reflection claims you while you're afraid, the exchange becomes permanent. Exchange. A soul for a soul, he said, eyes gleaming. Your shadow is already halfway through. The whispering from the mirrors intensified, a chorus of voices snarling her name. Elena! Elena! The reflection smiles widened, teeth pressing against the glass as if it might melt under hunger. She lunged for the door. But as she turned the handle, she saw it. Her shadow on the floor was gone. The whispering ceased. Now only one voice spoke from the mirror. But she wants to stay. Elena's reflection winked. The lights returned in a violent flicker. Kern's face twisted in alarm. "Don't look at it," he shouted. But she had already had. The glass shattered inward, and the darkness reached for her.
Chapter 8.
Chapter 9. The Breaking Point. Glass rained like frozen tears. Elena swung the fallen metal chair again, breathing hard, lungs burning with panic and rage. Another mirror cracked, another scream echoed, but not from her throat. It came from the shards, from the souls trapped within. She didn't tear. She had to break them, all of them. The hallway stretched endlessly ahead, mirrors lining the walls like open mouths. With each shattering blow, her reflection flickered, multiplied, distorted. Their faces began to disagree with her own. One reflection's eyes were wide with terror. Another smirked, lips curling too slowly. Another stared blankly, head tilted at a lifeless angle. Spidery fractures rippled across the mirrors. Her shadow remained absent, as if refusing to be part of this. Elena panted, knuckles white around the chair. "I won't let you take me," she warned the reflections, voice trembling. But the reflections only whispered back, "You already belong here." She swung again. Glass exploded outward. A shard skittered to her feet. She froze. The shard image showed her kneeling, but with hands covered in blood. Not glass cuts. Blood. Her blood. She blinked. The shard image smiled with a mouth too wide. Is that me? Or something waiting to be me? Her breath rattled. The lights flickered violently, as if the asylum itself was choking. She felt something watching from the corners, from behind the broken glass.
Every mirror she destroyed only seemed to make more fragments, more Elenas. Some shards reflected her crying, others laughing, one biting its own arm, eyes never leaving hers. Panic climbed her throat like vines. Elena stumbled backward, ankle striking a rolling metal tray. It clattered, echoing endlessly. The reflections reacted, like a swarm sensing fresh fear. Shards vibrated against the floor, inching toward her like insects made of glass. "No!" she choked out. She slammed her boot against the nearest piece. It snapped cleanly, but now she saw it. Her reflection didn't disappear. Instead, two reflections stared up from the broken halves, both grinning. The chair slipped from her grasp, clattering too loudly in the suffocating hallway. Her hands trembled uncontrollably. She pressed her palms to her temples, trying to quiet the rising voice inside, the one that wasn't hers. "I'm still me. I'm still..." "You can't break what's already inside." The voice came from a tiny slice of mirror at her feet. Only an eye showed, her eye, but darker, void-like, eating the light around it. Elena's pulse hammered painfully. She backed away. "That's not real," she tried to tell herself, but the terror felt real enough to drag her down to her knees. The air smelled of dust and cold metal, and something older, like damp stone that had never seen sunlight. Her mind clawed for escape. She turned, sprinting toward the stairwell doors. But the hallway curled the wrong way, as if the asylum were bending around her. Mirrors she had shattered appeared intact again, sealing off every direction. Even the floor gleamed reflective beneath her feet. Every surface showed her, multiplying, dancing, screaming. Elena's hands flew to her ears as the reflections whispered in a maddening chorus, "Let us out! Let us out! Let us out!" She stumbled through the double doors into an abandoned common room. Moonlight seeped through cracked windows, shimmering through floating dust. One final mirror stood upright in the center, untouched, its glass smooth, inviting. It reflected her body, but not her face. The reflection's head drooped forward, hair covering features like a corpse in a funeral portrait. Elena's stomach clenched. "No!" The reflection didn't mimic her fear. It grinned, far too wide, too eager. She raised the shard like a weapon, arm shaking. "I'm done being afraid." The reflection's voice poured through the glass like oil. "Who said you ever had a choice?" The mirror convulsed. Her reflection lunged outward, hands thrusting through the surface like water breaking, shards spraying into the air like silver snow. Elena screamed, stumbling backward, but the hands grabbed her shoulders. Nails like cracked glass dug into her skin. Her original's pulse thrummed wildly in her throat. Then, abruptly, it stopped. The hands froze. Time froze. Every shard around her stopped crawling, stopped whispering. The reflection stared past her, eye corners twitching. Elena held breath at her ear, cold and familiar. A voice behind her, soft as silk. "You're not ready yet." Her reflection hissed and recoiled back into the mirror like a serpent denied its kill. The moonlight fluttered, darkness blinked, all the reflections fell silent. Elena collapsed against the wall, drenched in sweat, trembling. She looked up. Dr. Kern stood in the doorway, his coat spattered with glass, his expression unreadable. "Come, we don't have much time. The worst is almost here." Elena steadied her breathing, but her eyes widened in fresh horror. Kern had no reflection behind him.
Chapter 10.
Chapter 10. Don't answer the mirror. Silence. The kind that feels like a held breath before a scream. Elena followed Dr. Kern through the winding hallways, each step echoing against cracked tiles and shattered glass. Moonlight slipped through narrow windows, standing the floor silver, like spilled mercury. The asylum moaned under the weight of forgotten memories. "You said the worst is almost here?" Elena whispered, voice uneven. Kern didn't turn. He didn't breathe. He didn't cast a shadow. "It's already here," he answered. A faint buzz rippled through the walls. The overhead lights flickered, humming and warning. Every reflective surface trembled, no wind required. Elena kept distance between them, clutching a glass shard still warm from her grip. It felt heavier now, as though aware of its purpose. They entered the old therapy ward, room numbers peeled off years ago, leaving ghost outlines over rotting paint. Hospital beds lined the walls, some upright, some overturned, all facing the giant dominating mirror at the far end. A mirror taller than the ceiling itself, black as midnight, hungry. Kern stopped inches from its surface. He looked small, frail, like a man standing before a god he feared. This is the first mirror he ever made, the one that trapped his own wife. Elena swallowed a rising panic. "Why bring me here?" Kern didn't turn. He didn't breathe. He didn't cast a shadow. "You are the only patient who ever fought back," he said. "They want you because you are still whole. You still believe you are one self." The mirror pulsed. A heartbeat. Her heartbeat. Elena staggered back. "You think destroying mirrors would save you?" Kern continued, voice soft, but every strike, every fracture, invited more of her through. He nodded toward the reflective giant. Yes, her. The glass rippled like disturbed water. Elena's reflection stepped forward, emerging from the dark like a creature crossing into forbidden land. She was Elena, but perfected. Eyes bright with hunger, posture relaxed, confident, razor-thin smile. "Don't panic," Kern whispered. "She speaks lies, only lies." The reflection tilted her head, same gesture Elena made when confused, but here it looked predatory, delighted. "Elena," the reflection cooed, voice warm like a lullaby. "I'm not here to take anything. I want to give you what you've lost." Her throat tightened. "What did I lose?" Elena managed. The reflection's smile softened into sympathy. "Yourself," it said. "You came here broken, denying the parts of you that screamed for escape. I can take that pain, give you peace." The walls strained with quiet whispers, dozens of voices overlapping. "Let us out! Let us out! Let us out!" Shadows inside the mirror pressed against the surface, hands stretching like melted silhouettes. Elena stumbled nearer to Kern. He grabbed her wrist tightly. "Don't speak to it," he warned, "and never answer what doesn't breathe." The reflection blinked, slow, patient. "You're tired," it said. "You know how hard life became after—" "Stop," Elena snapped. The reflection continued anyway, because it knew every wound. After the accident, after his seatbelt jammed, after you survived. Her breath crashed out of her.
Her knees nearly buckled. A tremor shook the room. Kern hissed. She learned everything through the cracks in you. She feeds from the hurt you lock away. The reflection placed a hand on the glass, inviting. If you trade places with me, it whispered, you will never fear a mirror again. A beat. And he will be waiting. Elena's chest collapsed inward. Grief she had chained in the deepest parts of herself surged forward, violent, unstoppable. Tears fell, hot and unbearable. She stepped forward, 1 foot over the cracked tile. Kern yanked her backward. No, that isn't him. It never was. She shows you desire to hollow you out. The reflection's eyes blackened. So dramatic, Doctor, it hissed. Didn't you tell her you'd restore what was broken? Offer her a second chance? Kern tensed. Elena looked between them, realization unraveling like thread in her mind. Elena looked away. The reflection laughed, a sound like shattering glass. He needs her more than I do. He wants a miracle patient, a proof, a trophy. Kern's hands trembled at his sides. Elena, he whispered, I did want to help you, but I failed. I tried to fix what humans weren't meant to fix. The reflection slammed both palms into the barrier, cracks spidering outward. The whispers turned to screams, tortured, desperate, pleading. The mirror buckled. Elena! The reflection shrieked. Choose, now! Kern grabbed the shard from her hand, steel resolve replacing fear, and pressed it into her palm. Don't answer the mirror, he rasped. Whatever it shows, whoever it pretends to be, if you answer, you open the door. Shadows surge behind the reflection, bodies writhing in eternal silence, souls abandoned and hungry. Elena's tears stopped. Her hands steadied. She took a step toward the giant mirror, toward herself, toward the abyss. Freedom comes with a price, her reflection whispered. All you must say is yes. Another step. Glass groaned. Her heartbeat slowed, calm, focused. I'm done being hunted, she said softly. The reflection leaned closer, lips inches from the glass. So, is that a yes? Elena lifted the shard. No, she breathed. She drove the shard into the mirror's heart. A scream erupted. Inhuman, endless. Light burst outward, blinding, searing. Kern shielded his face. The wall shook violently as the reflection shattered into dust and silence. Then everything went dark. Sunrise found the asylum quiet. Staff unlocked the ward, confused by the stillness. The common room was clean, every mirror spotless. A single hospital bed stood, made and untouched. Elena was gone. Only a whisper lingered in the air, soft as breath against a window. Don't answer the mirror.
They said she vanished. They said mirrors can't talk. But listen closely. The next time you pass one in the dark, do you ever feel it watching? The truth is, the reflection isn't showing you. It's studying you, waiting for you to blink first. Every time you meet its gaze, you're feeding it a little piece of what makes you real. And when the day comes that it blinks back, you'll understand what Elena did. Don't answer it. Don't speak. Don't look twice, because once you do, you're already inside. And if you're hearing this, maybe you already are.